let's jump right into some of this news. Exciting news, quite frankly. There was the announcement of NWSL Expansion Draft rules. The NWSL Expansion Draft will be taking place on December 16th. It's a big one. There are officially two teams that are going to be joining the league come 2022, both West Coast squads, both California teams. We've got Angel City FC and San Diego NWSL. And there was a lot of curiosity, quite frankly, around this potential expansion draft. Lisa, a lot of unknowns because in years prior, with expansion drafts, it's typically been one team at a time, whether it was Houston Dash or Orlando Pride, or this most recent expansion draft with Racing Louisville FC, which didn't include Kansas City because Kansas City NWSL was a team that did join the league for 2021, but they joined the league via going ahead and taking the roster from formerly Utah Royals FC and then creating Kansas City NWSL. So that's maybe what we could start with when it comes to some of these rules that we're getting into and some of the things that stood out to us within the announcement of all of these draft rules, because we weren't too sure if they were going to be super reflective of expansion drafts priors. But for starters, one of the things that stood out to me, Lisa, was the fact that there are only going to be 9 teams participating in this expansion draft. I believe one of the reasons is that Kansas City is not going to be participating in this one. This was one of the reasons they jumped into the regular season for 2021, is that they were going to have protection going into that potential expansion draft. So not 10 teams available for this one, Lisa, only 9.
Only 9. And another thing, jumping off of that, remember the trade that Louisville had rights to Kristen Press and they traded to Angel City. They traded for draft protection from Angel City. So Angel City cannot choose players from Racing Louisville's team. Just another caveat to throw in there. Everyone, if you have a pad of paper and you're getting ready for December 16th, there are a lot of things that you need to write down just so you can keep track, because this draft is going to be crazy. Another thing in the rules that jumped out to me specifically is that each of the 12 clubs in the NWSL will have the option of including up to 5 international player spots on their roster. In years past, and this season right now, it's only 4 international slots. So adding an extra slot on each one of these teams, that was kind of buried in the in these rules that came out. But hey, I caught it and I found it. And I think that's super interesting to add that 5th player to that. I think this change was requested by the league and then ultimately approved by U.S. Soccer, the board of directors. And I'm excited for this. I love having these international players come in, but there was so much to break down on this expansion draft and rule list. There's another one for me, that each team may lose no more than 1 player from each position group. So we mentioned that there's only 9 teams in this. So San Diego and Angel City will only receive 9 players, right? Yep. But they can only pick 1 player from each position group. So each team needs to list out their players that are available, unprotected, to be drafted. So if you take a look at Racing Louisville, say, they can only protect so many players on their roster, 9 of them. So if they have forwards available, such as Nadia Nadim and Ebony Salmon, but only one of them can be drafted by either team. So they will remain one of them because it's only 1 player drafter from each position group, which that's an interesting little caveat we have in this draft.
There's it's almost like there's these very these very weird, for lack of a better word here, very weird potential loopholes to sort of dig in between the phrasing of some of these words, and quite frankly, that might work to the benefit of a certain team, depending on who's on the clock or otherwise, or the expansion teams who are the ones choosing. You don't know until you know. And for example, I had just in this past expansion draft with Racing Louisville joining the fold in 2021, they engaged in a trade prior to the expansion draft with Chicago Red Stars for full roster protection. So Chicago said, okay, we'll engage in a trade with you, but this is what we're giving you, and you can't touch anything else. We're out of the expansion draft. So that was an asset that I don't I'm not sure people were aware that was able to be done. And then all of a sudden it got approved, and away we go. And here we are in ahead of this expansion draft, and Racing Louisville making a little bit of a trade of their own to try to do the same thing, to try to give themselves some protection, at least from one of the teams that are coming into the fold. So whenever there's room within the rules for different interpretations, I'll just say, Lisa, weird things can happen. So I am absolutely going to be keeping my eyes on this NWSL expansion draft for sure.
I love the loopholes, and I know that teams will find their loopholes. So just to give everyone a timeline of what's happening, this list was just announced, but December 3rd is when the trade and the waiver window closes. December 9th is the end of the season process concludes. Remember, November 20th is the NWSL Championship. So that's December 9th. Then on December 10th at noon, the protected list deadline comes out. So that means each team must submit their 9 players that are protected, including 1 U.S. allocated player. That is December 10th at noon. December 10th at 5 p.m., that protected and unprotected list will be distributed to the teams. And then December 16th is the expansion draft. So that's just 6 days for Angel City and San Diego to take a look over the list of players that are protected and unprotected and kind of come up with a game plan. I'm sure those wheels are already turning for San Diego and Angel City, because they have a lot to pick up on and a lot to choose from these teams and all of the players that are happening in the league. And then there will be a $250 fine to any team that fails to submit their protected, unprotected list by the deadline on December 10th. So December 16th is the expansion draft, and then December 17th, the trade windows open, which honestly means that the floodgates open and the craziness will continue. And we will be here for you on Attacking Third, covering it all.
Yeah, and of course, like in years prior, just going off of, we can only go off of prior experience, and just because some of these deadlines are in place, quite frankly, doesn't necessarily mean that they've always been adhered to. So deals could be made on that date, but quite frankly, might not be announced until a much later date. Again, loopholes, teams tend to find them for some reason, and so we'll be paying attention to that. It's I feel like this is just the beginning, Lisa. I feel like once we get closer into December, obviously into the mix of the offseason, we'll start hearing some more rumblings. We might even see some trades taking place, some moves taking place ahead of that, and or during or post. We will be here to cover it all